today's live video at 7:03 Pacific time. I said it was going to be 7 o'clock, but it's 3 minutes late because that was an epic April Fool's joke. Today is April Fool's Day. Obviously, the only reason the stream was 3 minutes late, and we have some falling clocks due to the wind, but that's okay. Today, since it is this holiday known as April Fool's Day, I figured why don't we dive a little bit into some different mathematical hoaxes, whether related to April Fools or not, many of which are related to April Fools, that have been published in the past. Things that have tricked people in the realm of math and science that we often cover on this channel. Now, April Fool's Day is actually one of my favorite holidays, and one thing I want to note about that is it's not just that I love pranks. I have a mixed relationship with how I feel about pranks because I think they have a lot of potential for comedy and for human bonding and for animalistic, good, playful behavior. However, it's very easy to take pranks too far. Like, you know, all the YouTube prank channels that are like, I'm going to do something terrible to someone on the street and then yell, it's just a prank. So you have to be very cautious with your pranks. But the reason I like April Fool's Day isn't really because that I think the day dedicated to pranking is so inherent or necessary as its own holiday, but rather that I think humans would be pranking more throughout the rest of the year. If we didn't have April Fool's Day, I think it consolidates all of the natural pranking that humans would probably do anyways. Now, today, before we get into the hoaxes, I do need to tell you folks that ironically, something cool was actually proven today. This is what I call the family of things called an anti-prank, is my personal nickname for when something isn't a prank, but comes out in a context such as on April Fool's Day that makes others think it was a prank. So I think a lot of people are overlooking something pretty big that was proven today. It's sort of a big twist in mathematics. It was proven that decimal representations in any typical base, such as base 10, actually are finite. You can't have infinite decimals, it turns out. That not only affects numbers like pi, which now that they've looked closer, they've realized that they were doing too much with all the extra digits. They were calculating about an oval. For an actual circle, pi is not only is it only about 20 digits after the decimal point, but they got one of them wrong. It actually starts 3.24. And they got the golden ratio even more wrong when they look back at it with this new knowledge. It turns out the golden ratio is about 2.3. And it turns out the number E doesn't exist anymore with this new knowledge. Also, since 1/3 and 2/3 have a finite amount of 3s and 6s after the decimal point, it's a few hundred is the limit of how much you can have in base 10. It turns out 1/3 plus 2/3 doesn't quite equal 1. It's just close to 1. So this also means that square roots of many numbers don't exist. Like the square root of 4 is 2. But the square root of 2, I dare you to come up with a decimal that has a finite amount of decimal points that multiplies by itself to get you 2. So a lot of square roots don't exist. And that, of course, is an April Fool. I couldn't help myself but have some portion, even though I wanted to make it obvious enough that if anyone leaves the stream early, they don't think I'm just a terrible mathematician or get tricked in some way. So that's the other thing about pranks. If somebody doesn't get that it's a prank, it can be bad. So you want to make your pranks a little over the top, meaning like guessable that it's a prank in a way, and or you want to shortly afterward clarify it's a prank. That to me is one of the morals of pranking, is that first of all, obviously you don't want to prank someone in a way that will negatively impact their whole day. You want to more so confuse or baffle someone. And you want to clarify that it was a prank soon. I think there's something immoral verging toward actual lying if you are to prank someone and just assume that they'll deduce it's a prank and you don't make sure to clarify that. So if you ever hear me say something in the context of a prank that would be dishonest otherwise. You'll know I'll clarify within a few minutes that that was the case, unless it's such an over-the-top joke that it's just pure... There's humor sometimes you use as well, but as far as false knowledge, I would always clarify after the case. And today, I'm not going to be doing the whole stream of pranks. We're actually going to be looking at mathematical hoaxes from history. However, when I reply to comments, I may reply as a prank. My responses to comments may be April Foolsy. Even with those, I'm going to feel obligated to clarify that it wasn't April Fool's afterwards. So the classic move is to say something like April Fool's after you've let the prank linger or get to its maximal point. Now, let's look real quick at how long has April Fool's Day been a thing? How long have humans been doing practical jokes forever? Since before we evolved to the state you'd call humans. We were doing practical jokes when we were in ape form. And humans still like practical jokes. But here, we've consolidated a day. It's sort of universally throughout parts of the world, maybe more so in the Western world, but to some degree in various places, we have consolidated many of the practical jokes into a singular day. And it looks here, according to Wikipedia at least, that the origin of that is not exactly known. There is some things that seem to have occurred arguably as old as the 1300s that could have been it. And we can hear that at least by the 15 or 1600s, it had become a trope. So when I say... Remember, an anti-prank that I was joking about earlier, but actually is a concept I think is interesting when you make something not a prank, but it's April Fool's Day, so people think it's a prank by accident, or another context other than April Fool's Day that would make people think you're pranking. I suppose it could even be in the context of like a boy who cried wolf scenario when you joke about things too many times and then someone doesn't believe you when you're actually saying something real. But even on April Fool's Day, it made me wonder. In this part of the stream, I haven't tracked down as many of these, so we'll have to check live a little bit. I've saved some hoax papers that were published on April Fool's Day, but I'm really curious as well about which actual papers have been published on April 1st that people probably didn't believe right away due to when it came out. And I wonder to what degree people who publish papers factor that in. Like, to what degree there are fewer actual papers published on that day because they don't want confusion that it's an anti-prank. I'm not sure about all those, but I do have some cases where mathematicians or scientists have made a paper purposefully on April Fool's Day as a prank. And my opinion is sort of the more over the top you go with it, the better. Because if you are mild enough that it's a little believable at first, maybe scale up the over the topness, like the structure of some cartoons or something, get more cartoonish as you go. But at the end, it should hopefully be obvious to any reader, so you're not actually tricking them with false knowledge. With that said, you got to be skeptical whatever you hear on an April 1st. That's just like it or not. If you read something on an April 1st, check it on a few sources and still be cautious until you see it reported on April 2nd. Now, which could be bad. What if there was a really big disaster on April 1st? I wonder if that's ever happened, that there was like a catastrophic disaster and people didn't believe the news reports about it. So maybe that is a risk of April Fool's Day. Like, what if you're panicking trying to tell one of your family members that the house is on fire, but they're like, ha, that's a bad April Fool's Day. You shouldn't joke about that. It's not an April Fool's joke, So I don't know to what degree that has come up in history. I do know, as far as April Fool's Day being a cultural trend, there is a whole nother Wikipedia article simply not focused on mathematics like some of the others we'll look at, but about notable pranks. Typically, the ones that make these lists are ones that have tricked people successfully, and sometimes people realize that the public is more gullible than they thought, and there are news publications that used to make April Fool's Day hoaxes and stopped because they realized people were believing it, even when it was ridiculous. And I personally don't think I think you should be cautious with that, because being gullible is often said like it's a bad trait. But to be gullible kind of just means you're like trusting of the world, which you don't want to do over the top. You need a little skepticism. But, like if somebody is just like trustworthy enough of the world, then in that way you may call gullible, then you can get tricked by a lot of stuff. And it helps that it's consolidated on April 1st, because I feel like people would sometimes want to play a practical joke, and the fact that there's a day for it maybe helps send them to a singular place. I also do personally enjoy playing little jokes and pranks on my friends, but when it's April Fool's Day in particular, but relatively mild ones. Now, here, there are many times where it has been reported things such as spaghetti trees, where how spaghetti actually grew. Things about new species of nature, things where Netflix or a show like that may make a joke version of what it looks like for their most popular films, or for what categories they're including. Some of these are playful and good, but it does veer a little bit into consumerism, where a lot of the examples, not necessarily on here, this has some good ones, but a lot of the cases you'll find on lists like this are a brand doing it. And it's like, okay, it's kind of funny if, McDonald's says that, oh, we're inventing the really weird flavored, the durian Whopper. It's kind of funny, but those jokes are sort of just like mandatory for the brand to do to get their name out there more. And I always have a big skepticism of trusting anything from a brand. So it kind of rubs off on a skepticism of wanting to laugh along with a brand, where, it's like these rich corporations who don't care that much about the environment and stuff. I'm less likely to want to laugh at their jokes compared to someone like, for example, Martin Gardner, who compiled different mathematical and sometimes other forms of science articles. A great writer. In fact, recently I've been collecting four-leaf clovers. I've found several more since the last live stream. And the next main combo class episode is about how to find your own four-leaf clovers, and just about my clover quest. And I'm pressing them flat in the biggest book that I had in my room right there. And that was a Martin Gardner collection of like a ton of his articles. If you find any books by this guy, they're often collections of his articles, but great, brilliant stuff. He is one of the people who inspires me as far as taking concepts from math that are underrated and trying to bring them to a wider audience, or bring them to people in a new, more digestible phrasing or things like that. So here, we're going to see several Martin Gardner ones, because I didn't even know this one until right here I'm seeing it. There's two other Martin Gardner ones that we're going to see in a minute. He must have loved his pranks. And so you got to be skeptical if you read one of his articles published on April 1st. And in this case, it looks like one of the pranks was that there was a new computer chess program that predicted pawn to queen rook 4. What would that to queen's rook 4? The where opening. Oh, all the way over there. So yeah, that does not seem like the ideal. That definitely not agreed upon as the best way to start a chess game. Like, it's an interesting way if you want to throw the opponent off and be less predictable. That's not elected the best way by a computer program. So that is one example of a way that you may write something. If you have an article, for example, that you may, or if you had a YouTube channel like mine, that you may make a video of something that spreads some false knowledge in a silly way. Some knowledge that hopefully by the end of the people reading it, maybe they've gotten that it doesn't make sense in some way, and then if they double check it, they will find why it doesn't make sense. It is a reminder as well to always double check anything with a second source. There are people who play practical jokes when it's not April Fool's Day. So double check everything, And here we can, but like I said, if you do a practical joke, my preference would be that you clarify shortly afterward that it's a practical joke. That's not always the case in these, but I sort of wish they did. I feel like they would be able to get away with bigger, crazier pranks morally if they threw a disclaimer at the end. They could make the whole actual article even crazier, or even like not even crazier in a predictable it's fake way, but they could trick people as much as they want if they make the last sentence of it that it was a prank, especially if it's on April Fool's Day. Sort of debatable to what degree this is good for culture, but I do genuinely think humans are still enough of animals that we would be playing practical jokes on each other in some form or another. Now, before we get to a list that I have of some different examples of the mathematical ones, let's look at one historical example of something like this that shows sort of what I was saying about how you want to double check things, and also just shows how you can't trust every publication to have equally high standards. Some publications, your math article needs to be quintuple checked by their staff and by a bunch of other mathematicians and etc. Other ones will let more stuff in. And as one way of testing that, this guy, Alan Sokol, submitted an article that he knew was nonsense, that he said if it was nonsense, but it sounded good and it flattered the editor's ideological preconceptions, meaning like it lined up with the worldview the editors wanted to publish in their thing, that they wouldn't double check that it was nonsense. And so he had an article called Transgressing the Boundaries Toward a Transformative Hermeneutics of Quantum Gravity. And it proposed that quantum gravity is a social and linguistic construct. And so the journal did not check and did end up publishing it. And it became a mild controversy of how that journal was obviously not very trustworthy in the things that they were publishing. Because if you're publishing something that was purposefully written wrong and not catching it, how much stuff have you published that was just accidentally written wrong? Just a wrong proof, not on purpose, but just someone did the calculation wrong or whatever, if you're not double checking it. And so that's why a lot of publications, to get in them, you have to have something good enough to pass multiple double checks and have other mathematicians have looked at your thing as well. So I guess don't trust the social text if that's still around, or at least don't trust them in 1996. So that's an interesting one. And real quick, let's take a peek at it before we move on. Do they have the original? Okay, I don't want to look for the original too far. What I'm going to go to is another example of one. This is one more on the end of science than math, but out of the ones I looked up of like what papers were published on April 1st that were funny, this was one. There's also a list we're going to go through, but this is one that caught my eye as just being funny how they phrase things. It's a super weapon of modern physics with a wide superset ranging from supernumerary rainbows to superfluidity and even possible super multiplets. They use the word super so much in this, it becomes like, that's one of those things where if you're reading it, even if you thought the math might be right, you can leave other clues that something is a prank, like using super as a prefix just absurdly frequently. And so this one is pretty funny. They're talking about the super weapon of modern physics, but they just go into supersaturation, supergroups. And if you read through all this and you don't notice that they're using too many like at the end, they put it fully over the top to make sure you understand something's weird with the language here. Supersaturation requires superhuman, superpowered superheroes, or indeed Superman. And so this one I extra like for the fact that they, apart from the subject matter, had a sort of different way of littering in the fact that it was a prank. Now, before we move on, let me just leave this in the background, but let me look at our chat. We have a good amount of comments, and we have someone who thought I was going to prank you by going no stream. This is the stupid thing. I was going to prank you by doing a 1 second stream, and then the whole beginning of the stream, I was trying to click the quit button to do a 1 second, then 2 second, then 3 second stream, but I couldn't quit it. And so once it had been like a minute, I was like, okay, we're in it for the long haul. April Fools, that I was considering doing something like that, but I was considering more so doing the topic of the stream that I said was something completely different. Like, I said that the topic of the stream was, I don't know, something that this channel's not known for. It's like true crime ASMR or something. But, or that I actually did that or the content of it's that, either the title or the content. But I ended up settling, since we have a lot of different April Fools in the future, on saving one of my favorite ideas that I want to pull on you folks on April Fools for later. It's going to take a little work, but I have a really good idea for one of these years. Maybe this is all a prank, but my combo lords know that, like I said, I will April Fools you when the portion is a prank. And there's lots of fun comments. And let's see. There's some notes on anti-prank. 2 comedians, Sabas314 says, announced their marriage on April 1st. That is a good time to make some sort of announcement that it doesn't really matter if the public knows the truth about, but that eventually the truth will be obvious. So that is the type that you don't necessarily have to say it's a prank, because it'll be obvious you're actually married eventually. And like, who cares if the public knows right away? So that's a great family of prank. And we had a comment. I'm not sure if this is I'm skeptical of anything I read on April Fool's Day, but according to this comment, Canyon Lark says they had to close down a lab they work at because they were worried people wouldn't believe the sign or any notifications about it because it's April Fool's Day. That's kind of funny. We also have someone asking, Down in the Well asks, people who are born on April 1st are jokes. And yes, I'm sorry to say, but in my opinion, I don't look down on people of any gender or race or age or whatever, except for the age-related factor of I think you are a lesser human if you were born on April 1st. No, April Fools, obviously, April 1st being your birthday would just be a sort of fun coincidence. People wouldn't believe it was your birthday usually, so that's kind of interesting. We also have a note from Hacker1MC that it's not a spaghetti tree, it's a spaghetto tree. And trust me, I know that I didn't know the name about that, but I do know that the singular of spaghetti is spaghetto. There is an episode in the Combo Class Future someday about weird singular and plural forms of words. And trust me, I know all about the confettos, the graffitos, and the spaghettos, and more. Now, we have some other examples in the chat of stuff. Someone said some people are getting filtered in the chat. They had to hit all messages. I don't know why it does that on YouTube. It's annoying. They have all messages or top messages. I don't know why they put that. So I get when I'm the viewer of a stream, unless it's a really, really busy stream that the comments are flying by, if I'm watching someone's stream, I always set it to all, because I don't know what type of filter they use to decide they're top or not. Like, the comments don't have likes here, so how do they decide which ones are top? And then, so the stream pranked me. Hopefully it doesn't. The prank I'm hoping doesn't happen on me is that it's been rainy weather, and according to the Weather Channel, the rain stopped for the day. But what if the Weather Channel's pranking me? So, then we have some other fun ones. And now to move forward, feel free to leave a chat. I'll answer it maybe as an April Fool's joke, or if I don't have a joke come to mind, I'll just answer it otherwise. But moving forward, this is a really good forum post I found. And first I just have to note, Math Overflow, which is this portion of Stack Exchange, which is basically a forum, is probably by far the best math math-related forum. It has limitations. It's not perfect. Can't find everything there. There's pros to looking at simpler forums, even like some subreddits or stuff. But on the big scale, this is the best math-related forum. All of the comments on it have a far higher expected value or whatever. The comments on it are typically really smart. And this is just a fun list. Sometimes you can just also find a thread that relates to something you're interested in with different examples of something. This one is asking what I had been curious about, that I Googled this earlier to get here, of examples and to find the other ones I showed. But this one had several of the ones I was going to mention anyway. So I was like, this is a good place to comb through. It includes a few I was going to mention anyway. And here, we're going to have a bunch of comments, but the person in the original post says something about P equals NP. That is a big unsolved problem. You actually get $1 million, no joke, if you were able to actually prove whether P equals NP or not. And here they say that 3,000 hours on a Cray machine, we settle the debate. Alas, the complexity of our algorithm is really complex. So this is just nonsense about saying that they solved this really big problem in mathematics as a joke. And then we get a variety of other examples. That was just the one the first commenter put in. Here we have someone who, this hexasphere, this thing would be a twist on how hexagons fit together. And here we have an interactive model. And I read a comment somewhere, I don't know if this is true or if their comment was an April Fool's, but one comment said there's a couple pentagons on here somewhere. That's what I'm looking for right now. Because that would be a neat way to make a trick. You have a geometric shape that couldn't exist, and the one you made does work, just like one of the shapes is actually subtly the wrong amount of sides or something. And that's sort of similar to these, like, the missing square of chocolate ones, where there's like a missing thing from a triangle, and then you like or from a rectangle, you reformat it so it looks like you don't have the missing one anymore, like the area is the same, but everything's a little shred off, actually. So we got the hexasphere as one example, and this one's great. I love this one. In 2009, it was discovered that the numerical value of pi has changed over time. That was originally what I was going to do for my opening prank, was going to just be that pi turned out to be finite. Then thinking about it, I was like, I can weave in a few more jokes if I said, in general, numbers can't have infinite decimals. But this is a whole nother way to go about it. Pi that has been calculated at different times was right. At one time, it was probably 3.14, etc. But it's changed over time. Physicists have long speculated that fundamental constants might not, in fact, be constant, but vary with time. And they go into, some details of how pi has changed over time. And just since this one's funny, we are going to scroll through it real quick. Here we see some examples of pi being measured over time, and they're using the fact that these were estimates of pi in the past as proof of what it was at a given point in history, as opposed to this meaning we've gotten better at calculating pi. No, they were completely accurate in ancient Babylonia. That pi was 3 1/8 back then. So that one's pretty great. They have geometric models of how this somehow is supposed to represent. This is sort of like the joke I made earlier about how they were actually measuring an oval. And that's a funny category of joke where it ends up being true because you're it's not true what they're saying, but where something ends up being true because you have changed two factors about it in actually the same way, where you're like, pi is wrong, it's the wrong number, and also pi isn't what measures circles, it's actually the oval constant. And it's like, that actually could both be true, but then we're just not talking about pi, and we're gonna have to make up a new name for the thing that we used to call pi. So We have a question of when I'm starting my new career as a yodeling tightrope walker. You're not. That was supposed to be a secret. That's supposed to be. Okay, I've been saying the next episode was going to be about clovers, but it was going to be a big twist. I was going to show my yodeling, tightroping, and my yodeling and tightrope walking skills. April Fools. And engineers, as Teletna says, have proven that pi equals e. I don't know about the equals 3 part. I think that we could be 3.1, 2.9. We should look a little deeper at that. But pi is e. And that's because e is actually a constant that describes pi pi is the 2-dimensional one. So the 3-dimensional one, where you have area for spheres and stuff, when pi shows up in those formulas, that one actually is e. So now we're going to call the number that we used to call EF, and that'll help things. So we have some other cool comments I will maybe get to in a minute. Let's jump back to this thing, this list of mathematical April Fool's hoaxes. And as I mentioned, we are going to get a few Martin Gardner ones. So there's the 4-color map theorem, which is still a really open question to a degree. Mathematicians are looking for a simpler proof of it because they needed computer help with the proof they did. And so they're still looking for like a new proof of the 4-color theorem, but it has been proven with help of a computer that any map like this requires 4 or fewer colors if the only rule is you don't want neighboring regions that are touching a side somewhere to be the same color. And that's sort of a big surprise. I actually covered that in an old Combo Class episode called Mathematics versus AI, or something like that, Mathematicians versus AI maybe. Because that was an example of times where computers helped mathematicians, and I felt obligated to put that in after roasting computers for the first half of the episode. But here, this is a really like strange looking shape that is like weird enough that if you first heard it, it's a good shape, I mean, for this claim that he said, this needs 5 colors, guys. I wonder if this was before or after the original one was proven. Let me look something up real quick. For map theorem proven, when was that? It's got to have been since then, right? So, 4-color theorem. Oh, that's funny. It was proven in 1976. So he was really good timing on this the year before that to be like, wait a minute, I found a counterexample. So here, that's a good one. I would like to see what other shapes you would try and come up with if you were trying to trick someone in that way. And here we have an email that a mathematician circled related to Fermat's last theorem actually being false. With a counterexample, meaning that there is some a to the n plus b to the n that equals a c to the n for the not possible most values of those. It can't be integers larger than 1 for all those. And here we have, someone who tried to trick their fellow mathematicians, perhaps, by circulating an email. And, maybe that's how you can see how much someone knows in your group. See who's good at detecting, or even just how much they know about a topic. See if anyone was reporting on your email as if it was true. But, you hopefully clarify to them afterward, because I don't want people trying to go out and be inspired by this stream to do mathematical pranks that they actually trick anybody long term with that makes people think the wrong knowledge. So let's see. And this, apparently that was quite convincing at the time because it was after the proof was announced, but there was a little gap that had to be fixed. And so there was like a little error they were still trying to fix at that point. Now here we have ones of, this one is a bit more about the Riemann hypothesis, I guess, but they're throwing in all sorts of stuff. When you're doing an April Fool's Day one, if you can't pick which topic Combine them. Say we solved the Riemann hypothesis using quantum anti-gravity or whatever. So, what is this note? The correct... This is a funny note. This whole thing is probably a prank, but this is a great footnote. Zero, spelled Z-E-R-O-E, with a little footnote. This is the correct spelling, according to Vice President Dan Quayle. That's a funny little bonus prank in there. And how about here? This one they say is only borderline mathematical. And anomalies in the CMB sky from the Planck satellite line up with where a string of nines occurs in pi. And this one says it's not submitted on April 1st. I wonder if this one was a prank or if someone was just overanalyzing this, like some of the false proofs we've looked at in previous live streams where someone just overanalyzes a connection. So, yeah, I wonder if this one was actually meant to be a prank. I don't know. Here, this is the other Martin Gardner one that I was going to mention. So, there's some really cool almost integers related to e to the power of pi times the square root. Sounds so random that that would be almost an integer. It turns out it's not a coincidence. They are... Look at this. This is going to be part of a future combo class episode, but I gotta show you in the meantime. Look at this. It's this, that, minus a tiny shred. And we can see what the shreds are. So these are approximations because this is irrational that it results in. But look at how small of a shred it is off from these patterned integers, e to the power of pi to the square root of these particular numbers that are a type of number called Heegner numbers. We'll get into those someday in the future, but just really cool that those are almost integers. And this one's close enough that Martin Gardner tricked a bunch of people. He said it was an integer. And this, the one who noticed these almost integers, I believe, was Ramanujan, one of the coolest mathematicians of all time. And here Martin Gardner was saying that it was even closer than an almost integer. It was an integer. And the punchline is tied into complex multiple... Or is this another joke? I don't know. This person notes that as we've seen some examples of mathematical games, which was one of Martin Gardner's columns, regularly had hoax columns for the April issue. Gardner then admitted it only in the commentary a month later. Good Gardner. He's doing what I was saying you should do. I love that guy, Martin Gardner. He's really one of like my inspirations for my channels here. For math, what do you call it? Trying to popularize concepts. Trying to bring them to a wider audience. Now, here we have one of the transcendence of e plus pi and e times pi. And here they're noting that these are transcendental. That is a pretty subtle prank, because those I think are open questions. I don't think we know if that's transcendental or not, but it like possibly could be. So this is it's a prank walking pretty close to a possible actual fact, if I'm remembering correctly about these particular combos of them. But got them. So here we have some jokes that the main way that math writers format their papers was going to be sold to Microsoft, and it included a pretty convincing first-hand account complete with embarrassing technical glitches that apparently occurred when Bill Gates took the stage at the announcement. And so, you know, Microsoft Word has a lot of programs, so that's a pretty good prank, like to a mathematician, not about a number, but about that the main way they format their papers is going to turn like Microsoft Word. So I actually haven't used Microsoft Word recently. I use the Apple one called Text Edit that is like just straight up text. It's like not for formatting. It's like for personal notes. But that's fine for me. So here we have someone who thinks the greatest mathematics April Fool, which is the Mandelbrot monk article, which apparently has its own Wikipedia article. And Udo of Aachen, or however you pronounce that, is a fictional monk that apparently, according to a hoax, discovered the Mandelbrot set 700 years ago. I have not made an episode about the Mandelbrot set, but it will be coming. I have made a couple episodes that touched upon fractals within grade -3 that we're in, and I don't know if it'll be this grade or another grade, but that's one of those things that I want to wait until I have someone to work with to make really cool visualizations of it. I want to, in my episodes, when possible, I try and use graphics that me or someone who's working with me designed ourselves. As opposed to just like looking up public domain Mandelbrot zoom. Although sometimes I have to do that and credit some public domain thing if I can't make it myself in a reasonable amount of time. But as I work with more animators and stuff in the future, that is one thing that if you like to animate, come up with a cool one of these for combo class of Mandelbrot zoom. Anyway, here, this is sort of a prank about mathematical history as opposed to about a mathematical fact. That could be another funny way to go about it, to, have some prank that, for example, something that was only really recently discovered was discovered long ago, like in this case, and sort of, again, a subtle-ish prank, like sort of veering close to something that could have possibly been true. Here we have, in physics, the apparent discovery of a quasar with redshift. I'll admit I don't know as much about why that's such a prank. I would like to study more physics in the future, but at the moment I know less about it than mathematics. Although there are corners of it I know a bit about. Here we have, let's see. At the end of this message is a sketch of an argument that Zermelo-Fraenkel's set theory is inconsistent. And so this was someone trying to, prank everyone that the basics that we use to sort of define mathematics were not consistent to the degree we thought they were. Let's see if we have any others. Here we have some other ones about Fermat's last theorem. That would be a classic type of prank. There's a historical actual tale where, oh, by the way, it's gotten dark enough that I don't have my marker handy. I was going to erase this and write April Fool's Night, but you can see it's become April Fool's Night. Anyway, which isn't any different. The pranks continue as usual in April Fool's Night. In fact, if you're now in the digital world, you could prank someone when it's April Fool's for you and not even for them. So maybe you got to watch out for more than just April 1st. You got to be careful March 31st to April 2nd, because if someone did a prank in a different time zone digitally. So I never thought about that. You should, if you're publishing a prank on April Fool's Day, you should do it right in the middle when the most amount of places have the time zone in that day. Now, got our loud train. And let's see, some more. The jokes about Fermat's last theorem are neat, I was going to say, or they work well because there's a real interesting historical tale of Fermat saying that he had found this magnificent proof to something and then dying before he wrote down what his apparent magnificent proof was, because according to his note, the proof that he knew was amazing but was too large to fit in the margin that he was taking the note about it with. He was jotting that note in a margin. And just imagine investigating a dead mathematician, a great mathematician who had died's paperwork to see what else they may have discovered. And you find the note that says, I've discovered a magnificent proof of so-and-so thing, but it doesn't fit in this margin. And it's like, no, did he write it down anywhere else? Nowadays, it's debated to what degree it's likely that he actually had a proof, because it's probably more likely that he was mistaken. There's logical trains of thought that people have constructed and shown that could have been what he thought, that are more likely probably that he thought one of the wrong trains of logic than that he had proven this in something way back then with the amount of mathematical knowledge they had, the stuff that actually went into proving it was intense. The culmination of centuries of math culminated in Fermat's last theorem being proven, and so it's kind of hard to imagine without having those centuries of knowledge still doing it. But who knows? That is an open mystery, so it's a good ripe area to prank from, and maybe you'd tell someone that Fermat had proven it, and that he had proven it in a very unexpected way. Maybe I don't know. There's various ones here related to Fermat's last theorem for reasons. Here we have one about the Riemann hypothesis. Here we have one about the King's Gambit, which here this is related to chess. The busting of the King's Gambit. Let's see. No more April Fool's jokes. I don't know. Is that some meta joke? Anyway, that's a chess-related one. There are plenty of open questions about chess that would be a pretty classic prank to pull any year. Could be, oh my god, they proved that chess is a second-player win. Because it is the type of game that is either a first-player win, second-player win, as far as there being an optimal strategy that can guarantee it for the player, if they knew an insanely complicated strategy tree, or that either player can guarantee a forced tie. It follows Zermelo's theorem. So that would be a pretty classic prank on someone who knew chess but didn't know as much mathematics, maybe. I guess you couldn't know chess that well, because it's sort of hard to imagine it being solved anytime soon unless there was some brilliant mathematical thing. Because as far as like brute force, there are a lot of possible positions that the chessboard can be in. And it can be facing north, east, south, or west. It's 4 positions. It could be upside down, any of those. That's 8 directions. So here we have a prank in The Simpsons. It looks like a counterexample to Fermat's last theorem. It doesn't say equals 0. Maybe he was about to write that or something. But it looks like a counterexample, and it's close enough in either this example or some other example from Simpsons I remember reading, was close enough that it would trick many calculators of the day. And so you could easily get tricked by some of these things. I don't know if that was this one, but there are some related to this that were tricking actual mathematicians who just plugged it into the calculator in front of them. With these ones, it just happens to be a near solution. That's actually something that mathematician Ramanujan, who came up earlier, was studying. Was a lot of these are from him. Him discovering that some near miss from Fermat's last theorem. Obviously, he didn't find an exact case because it's been proven impossible, but he was looking for ones that were just even close to it to find those patterns. Here is another one that looks like it could trick a calculator, or trick some computer programs, something about prime factorizations. And here, some more interesting ones, and this one's about a mathematician philosopher not known for lightheadedness. Lightheadedness. I think it might mean like lightheartedness. Not known for lightheadedness. That's revealed on April 1st, 1980. That a subtle logical phenomena in the context of the Lowenheim-Skolin theorem imply the impossibility of fixing an intended model of anything, including the natural numbers and the reals. Saying that things are impossible is ripe for some potential pranks, and I almost, as the opening prank of this video, I almost did one that was, guys, you won't believe it, but you know how a lot of you, when you studied imaginary numbers, you felt like, this is wrong, this is fake, these aren't real, they are imaginary. Well, you were right. Your gut feeling was true. Imaginary numbers have been proven that they don't exist. It never makes sense to use them. So that was my alternate prank, but I went with something else. So let's see. Speaking of which, they have got to rename imaginary numbers. Now, here we have an article about how to obtain the number of gods in our universe using the Euler characteristic, which relates to the Euler characteristic relates to geometric things. So yeah, what if you could That's a funny type of prank that is pretty quick to note it's fake, but still funny, is to say that something proved in mathematics, that we have proven something really tangible about the real world. That then when you think about it, you're like, wait, how could the formula even like predict or know that? So in this case, it's about the number of gods as topological invariants, but I could imagine many ways you could apply this. So here we have some notes about tricks related to entropy. And here's an April Fool's issue of something. Let's open that in a new tab for a minute. And here's another one that's an article that is a non-Euclidean story. And they call it a fantasy novelette in this one. So they're sort of being obvious that there's something non-typical math proof going on. But perhaps they are still implying some prank. Some of these I'd have to look through a little more thoroughly to, say, laugh at the prank and be like, oh, they got him so good. But these are just some examples, and, I'm not going to comment on every single one here. Leave a comment if you have any favorites that either have tricked you or that you've read online that may have tricked others or whatever. This one says they think this short note counts, but they're not sure if it was intended for an April 1st joke. And it says that this conjecture is equivalent to the Collatz conjecture. And it looks like this person was trying to prove their thing, which is the same as the Collatz conjecture when it gets simplified, according to that last thing. And they are trying to get a proof for $500. Or $50 if it's a disproof. I guess maybe that person just thinks it's funny that they're offering that. Not sure the details, but as I've noted, the Collatz conjecture is something that often attracts what you'd call crank mathematicians who write papers that look like they're pranks when they're not intended to be. So, got to be careful when you read a proof of the Collatz conjecture. It has not been proven yet. It is not expected it will be proven sometime soon. It could be. If it is, it will probably be a very, very long paper. Who knows? But it's very unlikely. If you ever see a paper less than 10 pages that says it proved the Collatz conjecture, that it did. So here we have some notes about... these ones dive a little more into physics. And what about this one? The page wasn't found. That's too bad. Which one was this? Oh, this was our super cool article. And so those are some examples that were throughout the math overflow theorem. Let me take one moment to look through our chat again. And we have Abelian grapes. That is what's purple and commutes. That's good. It's a joke on what's called an Abelian group. And why did the chicken cross the Mobius strip? To get to the same side. Those are some pretty good ones. Some of these are from Paradigm Shifter Retro. What does a one-sided cow say? Mobius. And actually, I don't know if I have these saved. I was almost going to also go through some mathematical jokes and memes today because we were on the topic of humor. Maybe we'll do that in a minute. I'll see if that makes sense today. We also have some notes that on some things you need more colors, and that is true. On a Mobius strip you need 6, on a torus you need 7. Yep, even a sphere. I believe, or no, a donut at least is different. So a donut would be equivalent to a torus. Yeah, that would need 7, according to Benzene here. I did mention that when I mentioned it in an episode once. And I guess that was an answer to another curious commenter. Very awesome. I love seeing that when one person asks a question in the chat and other people help answer it, giving each other more knowledge. Of course, today there was also a good amount of jokes in the chat. So Thank you all for your jokes and various other ones. And 0, someone says, is an imaginary number. 0, it could be debatable. Like, what makes 0 more real than imaginary? It's right in the middle of the complex plane. 0 is sort of like, we call it a real number, but what is to say that it's neither? I think there's logic to saying we're going to define 0 as neither, or we could go with both. And there's also some other people mention communities, such as the Minecraft community has loved their April 1st anti-pranks. By anti-prank, I guess you mean where they actually did something and then people thought it was a prank, but it turned out not to be. Maybe I should do a really good one of those one year. That would be pretty cool. But the problem is, if you make an anti-prank, I'm always worried that I'm going to make a prank that people leave the video before they get it. I was going to make a whole just singular video, like not live stream form today, and I was going to just go off on a way deeper version of the decimals are finite. But I was going to start a lot lighter, stuff that was a lot more believable, and then build up to this proves that all decimals have to be finite. And so I was worried people would quit the video and just be like, oh man, that guy is not as smart as I thought. Or that I would trick people and that they would believe it. So that's the worry. And so in some ways it takes nobility to do certain types of pranks, or like not nobility, but like it takes courage, because you have to know the fact that there's a chance some people will get the wrong impression of you, leave early, and never know they had the wrong impression of you. So maybe it's good to do pranks with things that will be obviously apparent in the future. Like if I pranked you that I had a really weird new animal, but then you actually see it in future episodes or something. Which I don't need because my 3 cats are enough, and they're great. And we have notes of 0 plus 0i equals 0. And yeah, it's leave your thoughts to what everyone else thinks about complex numbers. I am a fan of them, and I think they need a better name, because complex makes them sound hard and imaginary makes them sound fake. So we need a better name. We need, I don't know. I've made suggestions in previous random episodes here and there of better things we could call them, such as the lateral numbers or the sideways numbers, or something implying that they're a level deeper in terms of things like square roots. And a classic joke we have from video here, of course, probably, I would say this is the most classic math joke. Why is 6 afraid of 7? Because 7, 8, 9. When I was thinking about what other ones you could do about that, I realized you could make some funny variations using some earlier numbers, because the other numbers that have like a really extra notable double meaning for their name is 1, like I've won something, and 2, like I've done something also. So I realized you could have also a joke like that. So why was 1, let's see, why was -1, why did -1 share the trophy with 0? Because 0, 1, 2. See, that's a new one, isn't it? I mean, maybe someone at some point in history has come up with that. Let me know if you can track down if that's a new one or not. But, so that, we have one here. 1 was a racehorse. 2 was 1, 2. 2, 1, 1 race. 2, 1, 1, 2. No, wait, and 1, 1, 1, 2. Yeah, that's a funny one, because you get more and more numbery as it goes on. Now, maybe, I can't decide if it's a good time to do a few math memes. I set aside a few. Here's the thing. I was going to pull some math memes that were the top posts of the funniest ones of the top posts of the past year of the subreddit math memes. But I was going to wait to do that until it had been a year since I did that, so we don't get duplicates. And it hasn't quite been a year. So I'm going to come back to that in a few months looking at some funny math memes I've seen that you folks will appreciate. It just doesn't make as much sense today, because if I do it 1 year after the last time I did it, there will be a much easier way to avoid all duplicates. So there are other math jokes, of course, and sometimes I actually got to admit I find it funny when some pages that say they're about really, really funny math jokes, they're not that funny. There are some math jokes that are really funny, but it's almost more funny in a meta way when a website's like, this joke will make a mathematician bust up laughing. They are going to die laughing from this joke. And it's something like so dry. But math jokes range. They're good ones as well. I like all the twists on the binary one where you say like, there are 1 0. You have to write out this joke. It doesn't work sad. There are 1 0 types of, which looks like 10 types of people in the world. Those who understand binary and those who don't. I like the possible extensions to that where you're like, there are 1 0 people in the world. Those who understand binary, those who don't, and those who also understand ternary and knew this joke was actually about that. So you could take that further, of course. It might get a little less funny after the third one, but you could come up with some way to make it a new twist. Leave a comment if any of you have what you think would be the funniest way to do those 2 jokes and then do a new one for base 4 that isn't the same as the base 3 twist. We have a note of Fermat proving about 26 being the only integer sandwiched between a square and a cube. And yes, it is known as Fermat's sandwich theorem, according to one source I read. Not that many sources call it that for some reason, because it's a great term. But one source, an actual legit source I read, did call it Fermat's sandwich theorem. And that states that basically it's usually stated that as in terms of positive integers, which gets rid of the case of 0 between 1 and -1. 26 is the only integer sandwiched between a square and a cube. And it's really interesting when you look at bigger scale versions of that, of like, what are the only integers that are 2 less than a perfect power and 2 more than a perfect power? That will show up again in the future. It also relates to if you get an even closer gap, like what are 2 perfect powers that are neighboring? Well, 0, 1, -1, but what apart from those? Any neighboring perfect powers? Only 1 pair in existence. Catalan's conjecture proved that, was proven, I guess now it should be called Catalan's theorem, I guess, but it's that 8 and 9 are the only perfect powers larger than 1 that are neighbors with another perfect power. And that makes 2 and 3 so special. 2 to the power of 3 and 3 to the power of 2 are neighbors. Just like 2 and 3 are notable for being the only neighboring primes. And then you have 2 to the 3rd power and 3 to the 2nd power being the only neighboring positive perfect powers? Come on! 2 and 3, they are best friends. Everyone gives 2 all the credit. If 2 had any say in this, 3 would be brought along for a lot more of the trophies. Now, we have some other thoughts about how that's hard to prove, and yeah, maybe someday we'll look in the proof of that. We have a joke from Tletna about, has my love for math been a long con/joke? Maybe I actually hate math and clocks, which explains all the fires. Yeah, I have been trying to destroy the clocks as quickly as I can, but they keep reappearing for no reason. No, I personally love math. The one thing that not all of you are going to like as much is that the next host of Combo Class is a bit more into language, like linguistics, than math. Like you probably were aware, but my boss who created Combo Class hired me for 3 seasons. And like there was a chance it was going to be more, but maybe I'll come back in a few seasons. But after grade -3, it's going to go to grade -4 through 6, the new trilogy with the next host of Combo Class. So, no, April Fools, I created Combo Class. Don't worry. But, so yeah, like I said, the stream itself is not focused on pranks. But given it's April Fool's Day, I probably will answer comments at least half the comments with pranks. I can only do it to half of them, or it gets boring, because you know I'm starting with a prank. Got to keep you on edge by answering half of them as a prank and half not. Now, those are some notes of the extra mathematical day ones, or extra mathematical ones. Let's go back. I closed the page, but let's go back to it. Of some general ones that will include... Oh, and this is another interesting list. Here, I'm looking for something on Wikipedia, and I also found they have this thing called List of Practical Joke Topics. So these are some notable pranks right here that got their own articles. If you're a prankster, this is what you want. Your prank to have gotten an article. So some of them are just types of practical joke. Other ones are a particular prank in history. And I love these lists, like list of slapstick comedy topics. They have comedians, films, techniques. The list of slapstick techniques that have articles. I love pages like this. This is why Wikipedia is so good. You just see all the connections. Like, don't auto-trust a fact on it. But Wikipedia is better than any other website at just having, like, lists that connect this concept to that concept to that concept to that concept. And so it always, when you're researching something, reminds you of all these other things that you could consider connected to it. So, or teaches you for the first time. So I think Wikipedia is an incredible source for learning about a topic, not for getting the final details about the topic, for learning about a topic that, to show you a given topic, is interesting enough you would want to research it more. Or to show you potential connections that it may have with another topic that you could research that particular link more. And if you can get some of that from Wikipedia with the citations, but you can't go everywhere there. But I think Wikipedia is, if anything, underrated as an educational resource if you consider it more of a way to learn about things than to get all the details. So what I wanted to go to here was the list here again to see if there's any particular ones that, like, there was a Martin Gardner one on here, so I wonder if these have any other notable examples of the type of things we were talking about, which are like mathematical or scientific more so. And they do have one here, the Jovian-Plutonian gravitational effect. That has an article. It looks like reported that a conjunction of Jupiter and Pluto would cause a noticeable short-term reduction in gravity on Earth. And that's a great prank. If you can trick people that there's going to be a time where there's like half as much gravity on Earth. I don't know how far they tried to say, like how little gravity they said there would be. One woman called and claimed she was floating. I don't know if she was playing along with the prank, or I don't know if they somehow tricked her that good, or if maybe something else weird was going on there. Coincidentally, there was a separate event that caused gravity to be different that day. And yeah, this is all a conspiracy. The gravity was different that day. They're trying to cover up that the gravity was different that day. But, nope, that's a good prank. Gravity being different on Earth. And what else do we have down here? I'm kind of blocking it. What else do we have around here? We have that Martin Gardner one related to chess we saw a little earlier. And a lot of these are pretty funny. I'm targeting, due to the frequent content on this channel, I'm targeting the math and science ones. But if you're bored, go through this later on your own, because it's kind of fun. A lot of interesting stuff on here. As I did mention earlier, I get kind of skeptical when it starts going to the ones about like Google, and then it's going to be like Burger King or something. It's like, okay, come on, you made a good joke because you want people to talk about you because you want to make money. But what about the jokes that aren't for the point of making money? So the best April, you kind of can't have the best April Fool's joke ever if you're a corporation, because just sort of soured by the fact that your joke is partially for the purpose of getting publicity, which is to get money. And so, bless all of the pranksters like Martin Gardner who did not make money off their prank. I guess he probably got paid to write his articles, but he didn't make extra money by trying to stir up some controversy and get everyone talking about the weird durian flavored Whopper or whatever. So, shout out to all of the more noble pranksters who have no monetary goals. Their only goal is to confuse another human. So, and as I mentioned, if you're going to be doing pranks, there are good ways. There are good ways you could do a prank. But for one, maybe clump them on April Fool's Day more. For two, keep it light. With a prank, if you have to ask yourself, is this prank over the top? Don't do it. It probably is. So, I used to watch old prank videos on YouTube, and it would range from some channels that could do it a bit more artistically to ones that it's just like you're straight up just going up and harassing someone. How's that supposed to be funny? So, I mean, I guess there's some, people like the courage of it because they're like, that looks really brave for that person. They could have gotten beat up or something. But nah, that's not a good prank, just to watch someone bravely harassing someone to whatever degree you could call that brave. No, pranks have to confuse people, or like these, give them false information that probably additionally confuses them, but which later they will realize. And I would say my favorite type of prank is probably the ones where you ramp up throughout it. Like if it's an article or something you're telling a friend, you start out with something that sounds more believable and you sort of ramp up so that maybe you really get them pranked at the beginning, but then you get to put in all the creative, crazy stuff as well, while making it clear at some point that it was a prank. So, obviously, none of those are actually my thoughts about April Fool's Day. I'm trying to do this big meta April Fool's prank about how I'm interested in April Fool's Day, but I just hate April Fool's Day. April Fools. So, we're going to wrap up the stream shortly since I looked over. It's the first time I noticed it passed an hour. That's usually a good amount of time for me to keep a high level of motivation and being interesting for while talking in a row. Sometimes we do 2-hour streams with a break in between where I run inside. However, today we're just going to cut it off somewhat shortly. So looking back at a few of our comments, we have some other people making some cool pranks. Someone says, if they make a Mandelbrot Zoom graphic for combo class, where is best to send it? So I am still working on a problem I have, which is that I'm really bad at responding to emails from people I've gotten, and I'm still working on going through and trying to catch up on all of that because it's something I want to get better at, collaborating with people. I'm very introverted at times, and so I cannot guarantee a quick response. But send it to the email, which is the email it should be in the contact link on the About page here. It's Combo University, no spaces or anything, at Gmail. So that is where you can send stuff. I would love to have all of you keep writing me, and I'm sorry to the people who I'm very late to reply to. I am working on catching up on that. That's something that the way that I'm introverted and procrastinate communications in that way, I've actually been working on with psychiatrists and medication and stuff. So I'm thinking that hopefully that will be something I can get better at. But send it to that email, and at some point I will reply. We have some other good jokes, like astronauts getting ready for a party, and how they do it is they plan it. We have another note about Wikipedia, that it's bad for more personal or celebrity-like things, or one person saying politics. That is true. I was referring to the type of math stuff that's the topics I usually talk about on my videos. As far as biographies, far worse. So for stuff like that, Wikipedia, be way more skeptical. With those things, you want to really, every single sentence, see if it has a citation or not. Maybe even see where the citation's from. So, yes, Wikipedia, I should make that disclaimer that when I'm saying that I think it's underrated as a place to learn about different topics and connections, I mean the math side of Wikipedia, the things about number theory, for example. So, also, someday, I would love to be able to test how wrong they are at Wikipedia biographies and stuff, because one of my dreams in life is to have a Wikipedia page. Don't go out and try and create one for me yet. I don't deserve it yet, but I will deserve it someday. And when I deserve it, you guys can go out and create it if I get there, because that is one of my dream goals of life, is to have a Wikipedia page. Sounds weird, but I'm a big Wikipedia fan. And so, because I'm a big encyclopedia fan. Before I ever went on the internet, I loved encyclopedias. And Wikipedia is simply the world's largest current encyclopedia. So, that is a goal of mine, along with getting plaques on YouTube for my channels, which is a goal. We are partially along the way of the process. Like, that is up there in my goals with getting the plaque for this channel, passing 100,000. We will be on our way to 1 million, but I have been somewhat neglecting this channel and putting all of my effort into the combo class channel, because the last few episodes had pretty intricate editing and pretty complicated. It took me a while, mixed with going through some personal things the past month. But now, as I've said a few times recently, I am starting to get back into treating this channel with a little more frequency, trying to get back to faster uploads on this channel, while still trying to not have anything change about how I've been doing the combo class channel, because I'm very proud about what I've been doing with that. And if anything, maybe try and speed up the episodes on that, but I like what I've been doing with them. The next episode is along the lines of what I call a snack break. There's some episodes in the past that somewhat go into like botany or something else, and usually they're a bit more playful, like straight up like a snack break. It's like we're pausing, being a little more silly and stuff. But this is probably the best snack break-ish episode I've made yet. It is very thorough, and it's going to have a lot of facts that altogether are about weird things about clovers, but in particular, weird things that can help you four-leaf clover hunt if you ever want, because they're more common than you realize. People just don't look. And I've been finding a ton of them, and the later ones I found, well, here's the thing. Don't tell anyone when I put out the episode. I'm going to say they were clovers, but the things I thought were clovers were actually poison oak. So I was finding a lot of four-leaf poison oaks. I actually have a really bad rash right now, but I'm going to say they're clovers in the episode. Okay, April Fools on that part, but this is getting confusing. Not April Fools on the clover hunting part. Only April Fools on it was poison oak part. I have found a lot of clovers recently, four-leaf ones. And so I got faster at it, I think, because the first one took me by far the longest. So maybe I got better at it. One theory could be that I got luck from the first clover, and that luck helped me find the next one, and etc. But, a more practical theory is that I have developed some techniques to look for them quicker, or more thoroughly. So I will share the clover hunting skills, tricks, and facts and such, as well as just some really cool wildlife I've seen in the past few weeks while on this clover quest in that next episode. I still have a block of editing for it. I'm going to try and get it out as soon as I can. But last stream, I noted that I had like 5 hours of clover footage to go through. I've cut down most of it, but I still have more than half an hour of footage that I have to get down to 10 minutes. So it's still a lot of work to put into that episode, but it'll be cool. It's going to look really good. It has a lot of beautiful nature shots. It has some time-lapse shots I got that are like things moving over long scale periods of time. And the clover luck feedback loop is what Wade is calling that note, where your clovers just make you find more and more clovers faster and faster. And also, someone notes, Paradigm Shifter Retro notes, it's unusual to find flowers with non-Fibonacci numbers of petals in general. Yeah, not always the case, but it often does lean toward that. It is a trait nature seems to enjoy. And I've learned a lot, not just about clovers, but about a similar plant called oxalis that I bet many of you think oxalis is clover. The trope of what a clover is often drawn like is not what a clover looks like. A lot of people draw clovers with the heart-shaped leaves as what actually an oxalis plant looks like. I've looked through tons of those for a four-leaf one too, but I seem to have confirmed that it's rarer in those because I haven't found a single one in the oxalises of a four-leaf one. I found weird ones with cool leaves, or like two-leaf ones that you can tell were actually born that way, or like ones that have really weird size differences in their leaves, but no four-leaf or oxalis. But I bet a lot of you, if you've looked for clovers, might have been looking at the wrong plant. That's what I was doing as a child. All the clover hunting I did as a child, looking at the wrong plant. Can you believe it? A plant that, who knows, I can't find stats on the frequency of those doing a four-leaf. I've seen pictures of them, but from anecdotal evidence, it's a lot rarer than with clovers. In fact, you want a particular type called white clovers are the type it's easiest to find stats that those are frequent. I'll show you what those look like, and I will shut up because we're veering into me just discussing what's in that next episode. As for what's next on this channel, some random fun mathematical things, but even if you think you only like my mathematical content, consider the four-leaf clover episode mathematical, because it's about fours. There's a lot of a few mathematical random things in it related to geometry and stuff. So, because it's related to a number, consider it mathematical anyway. And in fact, it's a concept you could have predicted I would do someday, because a rare thing that relates to a plant, like I love nature, but a rare thing that relates to a plant having a strange numerical trait, yeah, of course I'm going to make an episode about that someday. And so we have notes about how luck stacks some multiplication factorial with n four-leaf clovers. I don't know, but also the bigger question could be what five-leaf clovers and six-leaf clovers do. You can find ones with more than 4 leaves. I haven't yet, but you can find ones with a lot of leaves. The world record is like 70-something, I think, amount of leaves, which sounds absurd, but according to something. Now, what I was wondering is how we could keep track of people's clover collections as an amount of points. Like, how many points do you think a 5-leaf clover should be worth compared to a 4-leaf clover? Now, the other thing I'm still researching a bit is 6-leaf clovers. I think they might actually be more common than 5-leaf clovers, because you can have times where the 2 3-leaf clovers merge together in a weird way. So I think it's actually more common to have a 6-leaf than a 5-leaf, because you can imagine one of those cases is like 2 clovers mutated the same stem, and the other is 1 clover had to grow 2 extra leaves. So that I haven't put in the episode yet. I might add a voiceover about that if I confirm that when I research it more, but something to keep in mind. And leave a comment if you have any thoughts about how we should award points, how many points each amount of leaves in a formula is worth for your clover collection. For example, first I figured the simplest way to do it is you take the clovers and you take, for each clover, n minus 3, and then we can include the 3-leaf clovers that you find, and you add them all up. So then, it's the excess leaves that we're counting. How many excess leaves have you found? So for me, I'm at like 5, except only 2 of them I'm positive are clover. The other ones, I can't figure out what plant they are, and I think they're the same type of clover that just looks a bit different. And I'm comparing it to so many other pictures of plants and stuff, but if I can't figure out a confirmation that they're clovers, and the voiceover of that part just has to be like, they're clover-like, I still feel lucky because they were surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of 3-leaf versions of them. So I did confirm that they're not just a plant that usually has 4 leaves. It's a really clover-like thing, if not an exact clover. But I can't figure out which type of clover it is, because it looks a little different than the white clovers I originally found. So that some of the sections of the episode I'm still researching and working on a voiceover for. Now, we have a note that maybe each leaf is worth n times pi minus 3 points. That's probably the simplest way to do it. Someone noted that I'm their hero. I hope that's not an April Fool's joke. Could be. I'll take it with good stride. But thank you so much if it's not an April Fool's Day joke. And I think I'm going to wrap up, like I said, like 5 or 10 minutes ago. And from there, be back before too long, within the next few days, with some sort of bonus content. And hopefully within the next few days with the Clover episode. There's a chance it takes me up to a week, but I'll try and make it less than that. So, thanks for everyone watching. I hope you enjoyed learning about some mathematical hoaxes with me. I do have to do my it's obligatory if I want to be a smart channel person, if I want to be a smart YouTuber. I have to throw in the it helps my channel survive people who donate on Patreon and YouTube memberships. So please consider that if you enjoy my content. Those are basically what funds the channel currently, because I don't accept sponsorships currently. And you make some money on ad revenue, but it's, you know, a lot of months I make more on the Patreon and YouTube memberships, and still not that much. So if you want Combo Class to get grade -4, -5, and etc., consider supporting one of those ways. If you're unable to, I totally understand, and I still hope to see you in all of my future content. And also to note, there are some Combo Class chat places, such as there's a Discord and a subreddit that are linked in the description if you want to find other combo lords or share other thoughts. You can also always, of course, share a thought about a live stream after the fact, although you won't be in the live chat. Pretty much all of my live streams, unless it's a really boring random one, all of the like interesting particular planned live streams I do, such as this one, are saved as videos on the tab. It's just under the tab that says live. So if you're ever bored, remember there are countless hours of live streams I've done in the past. And I loved everyone's comments. Those were all great different jokes and thoughts and stuff. And to wrap up, I want, in a way, I was going to do an April Fool's Day joke about like doing some opposite version of what I usually say in the outro, but usually I say that I love you and thanks for watching, and I don't want to April Fool's that. I don't want to say I hate you, even if it's a joke. So, April Fool's Day joke's over. I love you all, and get ready for April Non-Fool's Day 2nd. I'll see you again on April Non-Fool's Day 2nd or 3rd.